the 30th of September 2021. Before we commence our meeting, I want to read the land statement and make a couple comments as we begin. We acknowledge that Halton is rich in the history and modern traditions of Indigenous peoples. Halton is on the traditional lands of the Mississaugas of the Credit, part of the Anishinaabe Nation that extends from the Niagara Peninsula across Hamilton, Halton, and Toronto to the Rouge River Valley. We thank the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nations for sharing their traditional territory with us. We also recognize the enduring presence of Indigenous peoples on this land. Now, today is the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. It's a day to honor the lost children and survivors of residential schools, their families, and communities. While this is not a statutory holiday today in Ontario, we are all carrying on our busy days, and it is important that we find time today to reflect on the meaning of what this day holds, what it commemorates, and how we can all accept the truth of the relationship with Canada's Indigenous nations. Reading and reflecting on land acknowledgement statements is but one small step in the right direction of respecting our First Nations brothers and sisters. It is incumbent on all of us to understand the truth in order for us to truly reconcile. I took the picture of my background in Ottawa in June, only a few days after the shocking discovery of the remains of 215 children at the Kamloops Indian Residential School in British Columbia that only closed in 1978. Now, while the news on that May Day was almost impossible to accept for any of us, for me, standing amongst the 215 little pairs of shoes that were on display at our nation's capital to honor the dead was the truth that I needed to truly awaken me to the reality of the circumstances. A truth that included the fact that while I was sitting in elementary school, doing all the things that schoolboys and schoolgirls do back in 1978, that school was still open and operating. They were still attending schools. There are still children attending this school and others like it across our country. Now, like many of you, I'm wearing an orange shirt today as yet another small token of recognition of the work that we all have to do to restore a relationship with our First Nations friends, neighbors, brothers and sisters on this National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. Ladies and gentlemen, please take some time today to reflect on the meaning of this day. And I hope that this is one small step in the reconciliation that truly will only be achieved once we all fully understand the significance of what has occurred in our name over the past several hundred years. Miigwech, everybody, and let's have a great meeting today.
Amen.
All right.
The first matter of business this morning is regrets. Mr. Secretary, do we have any regrets to report today?
No, sir.
Okay. Next up is disclosures of conflicts of interest. Members of the board, I would look at this time for acknowledgement of conflicts of interest. I don't see any, so we can move along. We do have our public meeting minutes that were from our August 26th meeting. Could I get a motion to approve those minutes, please? Thank you, Ingrid. Seconded by Navneet. Thank you very much. Any comments, questions, errors, or omissions to report this morning? See none. Is there any objection to the approval of those minutes? Seeing none, those minutes are approved. Members of the board, we have one presentation on our public agenda this morning. We have Grant Hansen, thank you. We have Grant Hansen from Cornell University to talk about a diversity and inclusion resource for leaders program. And just by way of a brief explanation on this, I was on the Big 12 police chairs conference a couple weeks ago with our CGO, and I believe it was York, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. CGO, I believe it was York that had reported that this was an initiative that they had undertaken to help their board gain some education in this area, and Cornell University was the supplier of that program. And I thought it was an interesting opportunity for board members to gain some important knowledge to help us frame the work that we do on the board on behalf of the people of Halton Region. And I think Fred has organized a presentation by Mr. Hansen to explain a little bit more about that program, which we can then use later in our agenda to discuss whether or not it's something that we would like to participate in going forward. Fred, do you have any further comments on that, or should we just have Mr. Hansen make his presentation?
Nope, you've pretty much covered it, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome, Mr. Hansen. We look forward to your presentation.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the time today. I just as a quick time check, I understand about 15 minutes. Is that correct?
Tops, yes, please.
Okay, great. Can everybody see my slides?
Yes.
Right. I can provide a very quick overview of, of who we are within the university, a very kind of and a little bit of understanding of kind of the programs we do, dive down into how these programs are delivered, and then some detail on the diversity and inclusion program. So please, if you have any questions, raise your hand. Sometimes I don't do the best at seeing stuff in chat, so just wave or whatever. That'd be great. So for those of you that may not know Cornell University, it's an Ivy League institution based in Ithaca, New York, 155 plus years old. And then one of the key things I like to mention is Ezra Cornell, the founder of Cornell University, he had as kind of one of his mantras or mottos that if I were to fund an institution, it'd be for any student in any course of study. So that's the motto really of Cornell, and it's really the only private plus land grant institution, Ivy League. And as a result, you have a wide variety of about 15 different colleges and schools within the university. It's a very, very breadth and depth with regard to world-class faculty and instruction. That's the university. A very quick talk about the university. Now, the group that I work in is called the Office of External Education. And what we do is we work with all the different colleges and schools at the university and take those programs and deliver them in either what we call, kind of executive education, custom live kind of programs. We've done thousands of hours of that, but then we also have these professional certificate programs. And that's what we're going to dive in today is one of our professional certificate programs. And these professional certificate programs are comprised of what we call these expert-led courses. And that's what we're going to talk about today. We have these programs in all these different areas, and from anywhere from marketing to technology to leadership. So we have all tons of areas. And the one more specifically we're going to talk about today is diversity and inclusion. Before I get into it, let me talk about kind of how we build these programs. These programs, our design methodology is really this. What we're working with is we're working with the Cornell faculty and the current curriculum that's being taught at the university, and also primarily graduate programs at the university. So this content is based on the research and work of the Cornell faculty. What we do then, the Office of External Education, or the eCornell team, if you will, what we do is we take that content and we repurpose it for a very good online experience, okay? So again, these certificates are meant to be delivered and consumed online. And so we don't want to take it, just put a camera in a classroom and watch a 90-minute video. That would be really horrible. So what we do is we bring them in the studio, we redesign the courses. All the videos you'll see will be 3 to 5 to 6 minutes long. We interject kind of quizzes then and activities and tools that can be used. And one of the really key things and one of the key differentiators of this program is that in each one of the courses that you go through, you're required to do a project, like a multi-part project or plan. And so the key thing is the people that go through these programs are able to take the concepts, the knowledge, the frameworks, the assessments, whatever they're doing, and bring it to their work immediately. That's one of the very popular aspects of our programs is you're not just sitting there consuming content, you actually are having to apply content so you can go and change behaviors in situations at work. Now, all of our courses do go towards a Cornell certificate, and I'll show you what one of those looks like, but you don't have to. If let's say, you're going to have a group of people maybe go through the full D&I certificate, and that's great, but then you want maybe a larger audience to just go through maybe the unconscious bias course, you can do that too, right? So you can kind of mix and match these as you deem necessary. So to dive in real quickly, if you look at, here's what, for example, the diversity inclusion certificate is. Dr. Nishi is the faculty member that put this program together. This course, this certificate is comprised of 4 courses, okay? So you've got improving engagement, counteracting unconscious bias, diversity and inclusion at work, and fostering an inclusive climate. Here's the learning objectives you can have. I can provide these slides. If somebody gives me an email, I can provide these slides as a follow-up or a certificate flyer, either way. But this is the certificate program. Now, when you look and say, okay, there's 4 courses, what is that course experience? That course experience is this. It's a 2-week experience, okay? There is a start date and an end date for the course. All of our courses open up, if you will, or you get access provided at 9 a.m. Eastern US time. And then you will have 2 weeks to complete the work. There's not a synchronous time, meaning you don't have to hop on web meeting at 1 o'clock in the afternoon Eastern. There's no required synchronous time. However, you are going to be going through that program in a cohort. There's going to be no more than 35 other people, but you are going to be in a cohort that's going to be facilitated by an expert, and that's your facilitator that's basically going to be kind of helping you out and looking over your shoulder. So as you progress through watching the videos, doing the assignments, you're going to have to respond to and participate in the 2 graded discussion threads. And then you're also going to be working on a project as you progress through that course. And that facilitator is going to be there to help you with that project and also then grade that project. And so that is the experience over a 2-week period of time. The facilitator will offer multiple 2 office hours for you to connect with them and talk through something if you need to, kind of explore some concepts even more if you'd like. But that's our expert-led course model. You would do this 4 times. So, and then when you're done, you would get a certificate. This actually isn't the D&I certificate. I just grabbed this graphic, but the people that complete the program will have a Cornell University certificate that they can print out and put on their wall and all that kind of stuff. All right, so that's the quick overview. I've left some time for questions, comments. So that's all. I can show in and walk in and show you what the experience would look like if that would be helpful for you guys. Would you like to see that? Let's see here. All right.
We're actually, we have kind of a very short period of time to meet this morning due to other commitments with a national conference. So I think we'll stop this here. I will ask if there's any questions, and this matter is on the agenda later for us to discuss further. So thank you for your presentation, Mr. Hansen. Members of the board, do you have any questions for Mr. Hansen before we move on? I don't see any questions, although I can't see everybody.
Wait, we have one question down here.
I'm sorry, I can't see everybody, unfortunately, on the screen. Chief, go ahead.
Yeah, I think Fred has a breakdown on some costs, as I'm always thinking about budgets, but
yeah, we're going to cover that when we come to the agenda item later on.
Okay.
This was just for the presentation portion of the agenda.
Great.
Are you? I guess my question would be: would you like me to stay on for that item, or would you like me to leave? Which is
let me ask Fred Fred, do you have enough information that we can manage through that portion of the agenda later, or do you feel that Mr. Hansen should stay? Fred, I think you're muted. We still cannot hear you, sir. Actually, Fred has asked us, suggests that we play the video. So I'm going to accept his advice, and we'll play that video now. I guess that will help us deal with the matter when we come to it. Sorry, I apologize, Mr. Hansen. Can you play the video for us?
The video, which video? Oh, which video are you asking me to play?
You had a video that you were going to show us earlier.
I was going to show you the live or the course experience, but I can play. I'll play this. This is an intro video that is of this particular course. There would be one of these intro videos for all 4 courses, but I'll play this one for this course just to give you an idea of the experience.
Thank you.
Have you ever wondered why, despite all that we know about diversity best practices, and despite the fact that companies have been adopting these diversity best practices for quite a while now, companies continue to face significant challenges related to diversity? I'm Lisa Nishi, and I'll be teaching this course on diversity and inclusion, where I'll be focusing on the role that unconscious bias plays in perpetuating these problems related to diversity.
Okay, just give a quick little intro video, but it's very representative of the type of quality video, and the links are anywhere from 3 to maybe 6 minutes long. So that was all I was going to show. I was going to walk through the interface if people wanted to see more of the structure of the course, but I don't need to do that. So that was really the extent of what I was going to go through next.
Thank you, Mr. Hansen. I'm just very sensitive to our time commitments at today's meeting, but we are going to discuss this later on. I know that Fred has some pricing, and he's talked to some of our colleagues and other boards who I believe are your clients as well. So I think we have the information that we require, and we will let you know what the conclusions are. Once again, thank you for your presentation today. certainly very interesting, and it looks like a very worthwhile program.
All right, you guys have a great day.
Thank you, sir. Members of the board, we have 3 items on our consent agenda. We have Halton Happenings, Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan update, as well as Communications update. Members of the board, does anybody wish to separate any of those matters? Kurt, go ahead.
I'd like to separate communication update, please.
Communication, sure. Anything else?
No, that's fine, thank you.
I'm just looking for anybody. Okay, terrific. So we just have separation on the communications update, and you have the floor, sir.
Yeah, my question, or not question, I'll make a comment first. I think Kimberly has done an excellent job upping our communication capability, and I think we're, speaking for myself, I'm very satisfied with the efforts to date. I wondered if the board might want to consider looking at some metrics going forward, like how do we keep the momentum and not lose sight of our program from a metrics point of view. Thank you.
Thank you. Kimberly, would you like to, do you have some thoughts on that you'd like to address the board with?
Certainly, I can speak to that. We have been including our engagement on Twitter, which is our mainstream of connection right now to community. So you can watch those grow, and I can certainly provide more of a dashboard if that's something that folks are interested in. And we have as well, as we discussed on our last meeting, just launched that engagement feature on our website as well, which is tracking folks that are watching live our meetings. So there's a new engagement factor there. As well as the hits to our web page, which is something new that now that we have the website in our control, are able to track as well from an engagement perspective. So I'm happy to provide a further dashboard if that's of interest to people as they look at the communication report.
Go ahead, Kurt.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Kimberly. I appreciate that. And again, I think that's all been very successful to date. I think my thought is more around, do you have a view of what success should look like 1 year, 3 years, 5 years from now? That's more where my mind is going.
Kimberly?
Yeah, certainly. I would say that we have certainly grown astronomically since we began this project when I came on from an engagement perspective with the community. And what I could do, Kurt, just to show that progress is certainly compare where we started to where we're at now from all of our growth throughout the channels and what we have achieved. Usually at the year end, I do provide sort of a fulsome report to that, but I'm happy to provide that earlier should that be wanted. We can take a look at that as well. And I'm, of course, always happy to hear other ways that we can engage with communications as well if there's anything specific, but I can certainly provide everything that we've done over the past year.
Kimberly, I wonder if I can just help here a little bit. I'm wondering if there's an opportunity, and I think I'm hearing what Kurt's suggesting, and correct me if I'm wrong in maybe rephrasing it this way, but can we get a bit of, I guess, a plan for what communications is attempting to achieve so that we can actually benchmark against what the ultimate goal is? So if our goal is to achieve a certain level of social media connection, a certain level of web engagements, a certain number of people regularly tuning into our streaming, et cetera, can we create a bit of a budget for that in terms of what we expect to see at various intervals, so we can measure against that in terms of your monthly updates?
Certainly. And as I mentioned, the positive thing is now we're into just our first month with the new website. So we won't have a lot to compare in that regard, but I can certainly show from the digital standpoint and where we hope to grow with this new ability that we have through our website and communication channels.
Sounds good.
I think that would be excellent, Mr. Chair and Kimberly. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Thanks for raising that, Kurt. Members of, oh, sorry, Kurt, would you mind giving me a motion for the three consent items? Thank you. Can I get a seconder for the 3 consent items? Thank you, Gary. Any further comments or questions on, okay, Don, go ahead.
Might have been a little bit too late, but I've had some news that I thought I'd pass along. I was in the presence of some property managers and some condo board people management the other day, and they were commenting on the community mobilization officers and the conflict resolution service that the service provides. Good news, very well accepted, very well needed. How do we get this word out to those that still are unaware of us?
Chief, do you have any thoughts on that? Or one of the deputies?
No, I mean, certainly our members out in the public, whether they're community mobilization officers, they're all highly trained in resolution, dispute resolution, mediation. So they receive a lot of accolades for the work that they do. I know we put a lot of that on our Twitter account. Just looking at, I think we just surpassed 90,000 followers on the Halton Regional Police Service Twitter account. So that's another great way to get out some of the positive stories of what's going on out there, Don. So thank you very much for bringing that forward.
Great, much appreciated. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Would you mind seconding the approval of the 3 consent items, please?
Yes.
Thank you. Any further comments or discussion on confidential consent 1, 2, and 3? Seeing none, those are approved. So first up on our discussion items are minutes from the advisory committee meeting that was held with respect to our policy project. Any comments, questions on those particular minutes? I don't see any comments or questions. I think the action will deal, the approvals we'll deal with next. So anything that wants to be specifically addressed to the policies we can deal with on the next item. Can I get a motion to accept or to, approve those minutes, please? Ingrid and Gary, thank you very much. Comments, questions? Objections to the approval of the minutes? Seeing none, those are approved. Let's move on to our 6 new governance policies. Fred, do you want to, are you able to speak to us? If you fixed your audio, great. Would you mind starting us off on this, please?
The fix for my audio, by the way, Mr. Chair, was, as Dillatrust suggested, turn it off and turn it on again.
You can't pay for that kind of IT advice.
No. So building off the minutes that you just received from the committee reviewed 6 of the policies and deferred 2 more to October. The last or the 2 others, and all of the comments in the committee have been implemented in these updated policies, with the exception of 1. And I've explained in the discussion why, in my opinion, that particular change is not warranted. So I think there's about 10 committee suggestions that are reflected in those 6 policies.
Okay. Members of the board, so the committee worked hard on these. There, as Fred said, there is one issue that he did not incorporate as CGO because he didn't feel comfortable doing so. Any questions or comments? I see Nav's hands up. Go ahead, Nav.
So thank you, Mr. Chair. So Fred, there was one that wasn't implemented. Which one was that?
The inclusion of management policies and procedures as part of the service delivery box.
Okay, could I understand why that was not included?
Sure. It's the bottom of page 2 in the report. The service delivery box includes everything the service does and for the public. That's the operations side, crime prevention, law enforcement, victim assistance, emergency response, public order, as well as all the support that makes that possible, including recruiting, training, supervision, deployments, transfers, promotions, grievances, technology, finances, facilities, handling of public complaints, media relations, reporting, and management policies and procedures, etc. And what I'm suggesting to the board, that including management policies and procedures without the rest of it is highlighting the wrong aspect. in my opinion, because the board is governing all of the service delivery aspects, including the supports. In a nutshell, that's my rationale.
I'll just add just a bit to that. If you recall, now this was the one area where we didn't have unanimous support on when we were going through the individual policies at our committee meeting, and we sent it back for Fred to bring back a final recommendation. We're certainly, as the board, there are policies so we can approve what we want as is, or we can amend it, but that's based on Fred's recommendations coming out of that meeting, since it was non-conclusive on that particular issue.
Thank you for that, I guess, explanation, Fred and Mr. Chair. I just feel that because this one policy talks about the government commitment, and that I think we had mentioned that we would add something like an example, policies and procedures. It's very important because this is really, the schematic is really about governance. And a large part of, I understand, Fred, is around governance of the service. And that really relates to the policies and procedures. And I think if we say that we expect that the board shall comply to its policies and procedures, then we also, it's just a cascading effect to have the service comply to its policies and operational policies and procedures. So I think that the suggestion was to put that as an example. I understand it's more encompassing. And so that would be my suggestion. Thank you.
Thanks, Nav. Would anybody else like to comment on this? Okay, I guess I will. I actually support Fred's position on this particular item. I spoke against expanding on this particular area for the reasons that Fred set out. I just feel this is an area that is already covered in the policy. It is unnecessary in my mind to spell out an example or a list of minutia in that section. This is a schematic diagram. It does not comprise the entire policy. It is an illustration for the purposes of public awareness as to what the roles are. And I don't feel it's necessary. I think it overly, I think it has the potential of emphasizing one or two or three areas over all the other very important areas of which the chief maintains responsibility. I believe that the schematic stands and serves our purpose as well as is. So those are my 2 cents. Kurt, you want to comment?
Yeah, I agree. Well, I agree. I disagree. I think what we talked about was important. However, having said that, you know, these policies are going to be subject to further review going forward. And I think we can always come back to it.
Yes.
And, you know, I think we should move forward at this point, keep that in mind. And we'll have an opportunity to come back to it for further review down the road. That would be my 2 cents worth, Mr. Chair.
Well said. And I think that's an important point to be made about all of our policies. That policies are constantly meant to be reviewed and tweaked and I guess made to reflect the importance of issues of the day and relevant issues that the board's dealing with, or changes that may come in legislation. So I think that advice is excellent. I see Clark's hand up.
I'm not sure if you can hear me. I'm having some difficulty with Zoom today, as we all seem to be. So
we can hear you, but we cannot see you.
I know, and that's one of the issues. So,
yes,
you know, but so I will, after this, I'll shut off and come back in. But I agree with Kurt is that I think we should pass them. I appreciate the work of the committee who have looked through them and done additional due diligence on them as well. But like any other policy that we pass, they're living and breathing documents. And as we work through, especially after we adopt them, we may end up with some that we will have to tweak. So I'm supportive of leaving them as is, as the committee has recommended. And if we do find we do need to do some tweaks down the road, we are well within our purview to be able to do that.
Thanks, Clark. Just for absolute clarity, I don't think the board made a recommendation on that one particular issue that we're discussing right now. It was inconclusive as to what the recommendation was on that particular piece. And that's why it's been sent to the board to deal with Fred's report on that, which is to not alter it beyond what was presented to the board. So the committee is sending all of the policies with their recommendation for approval, with the exception of that small portion, which we've just talked about, that was sent in an inconclusive fashion for the board to make determinations. So this is based on Fred's advice, and I just want to be clear on that piece was not part of the recommendation, but it's part of today's recommended motion. Okay, members of the board, I'm not seeing anything else on this. Can I get a motion to approve the recommendation that you'll find on the staff report portion, which is CGO 21-9R01, which recommendation is the approval or the adoption of GO1, GO2, GO3, GO4, GO5, and G10, and that the following policies be repealed, and I'll state them for the record: attendance at closed PSB meetings, notice of police service board meetings, placement of reports on agendas, board member conduct, board education and training, board member recognition, and board member competencies and qualifications. And just for those that who may be watching from the public or from within the service that are wondering why we're withdrawing those policies or repealing those policies, and that is because they've been replaced by the policies I had indicated before: GO1, GO2, GO3, GO4, GO5, and G10 as being the replacement policies reflecting those issues. So that is the motion before you this morning. Can I get a mover for that, please?
I would so move.
Thank you,
Clark.
Clark. Can I get a seconder for that, please? Thank you, Ingrid. Further comments or questions? Any objection to the approval of the minute, or sorry, of the recommendation? I'm not seeing any. So those first policies in our governance project, I guess they're not our first. We had one that previously approved, so I can't make this a momentous occasion and say we've approved our first policies, because I believe one was previously approved. But good work, everybody, and thank you to the committee for your diligence on reviewing those committees, and thank you to the chief for his participation at the committee level as well. Moving on to item 4.3, thank you. Preliminary 2022 Halton Police Board Governance Budget. I will ask I think I'm going to be asking the chief to start us off on that.
That's me, Chair.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Fred. Go ahead.
Yeah, we'll go to Fred first.
Yes,
I think that's what we have in the agenda, right? It's the board governance budget first.
it is.
So
Oh, I
I've-
apologize. I apologize. Yes, I'm flipping back and forth. My computer problem this morning is only one of my two computers is logged on to the internet. So I normally have the agenda on one screen and the Zoom call on the other, but unfortunately one will not sign on to Wi-Fi. So I apologize if I'm doing some pausing, trying to figure out where we are. So.
So what I've done, because I know the board has said it wants lots of time to deliberate budgets this year. That was one of the things that came out of the retreat. Is I've put some preliminary numbers together for you and talked about some options. The preliminary numbers, they're sort of based on our status quo trajectory with no enhancements or add-ons. You'll note we'll already put the board over the regional target. And as I reported last month, in accordance with the board's action registry item, we're already in a trajectory for the current year of being about $35,000 over budget. So that's the first thing that I wanted to bring to your attention early. And then of course, and then there are some potential options. So one has to do with the entire strategic planning process, who's managing what, and in my opinion, the budget should match who's managing what. The strategic plan is a legislated requirement for the board. I do believe the board still needs some discussions on that item, and in fact, the policy committee is looking at that as part of the governance calendar policy in a couple of weeks. Our continued bylaw and policy development program could use some continued assistance from our double PhD law advisor, Svetlana, which I currently have not put into the 2022 base. The Cornell D&I courses that we just talked about, which I would say are not just geared potentially to board members, but any leader, including those in management, if so interested. And then finally at the bottom there or at the top of page 2, there's an estimate on a public opinion research, which I would suggest would be part of the strategic planning process that should be undertaken by someone in the board or I should say contracted by either the board or the service. The estimate I've put in there is based on Calgary's annual budgets. They have a lengthy questionnaire, which I think could be updated, and of course they have a larger population that they're surveying. But it's a start point. I haven't had a chance to reach out to other agencies, and in regardless, before I make that effort, I'd like to hear some comments from the board. So one of the things that became apparent in doing the mid-year report last month is that the board's governance budget is more than stretched. And it didn't get discussed last month, although it was reported. And I'd like to bring that to your attention and either discussed here or move to some sort of a committee or workshop or some direction on what to research, what to drop, what to change, what to transfer potentially between service and board or vice versa. There are some ways, of course, right off the top that the board can reduce these costs. One is to reduce its conference and training participation. Another one is to reduce its staff support, which is the largest amount of its budget. And those are the top ones that come to mind. But it's the board's budget, so of course, I've tried to link this base budget again to the primarily to the board's governance evolution project in a reasonable fashion. There's no enhancements, and of course, it's not the bare minimum. Anything you take away will slow it down, or anything you add will either speed it up or create better products.
Does that conclude your report, Fred?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, I have one question so far from Clark. I just want to point out that at our governance retreat we had back at the RBG a few months past, we had determined that the way we were going to approach our budget was to have the preliminary information provided to us, and that we would take it to a workshop to get into further detail and have that opportunity to have a more informal opportunity to understand all the aspects and see how the puzzle pieces fit together. So with that, certainly questions are in order. But I just wanted to make sure the board's aware that that is still the plan. So there will be plenty of opportunity to discuss this as well as the service budget prior to being put into a position to have to approve it. And just as an FYI on both this budget as well as the service budget, nothing is being presented to regional council until December 8th this year. So we did build in enough time so that members of the board can truly take ownership of the budget in terms of its understanding and significance to the taxpayers of Halton Region. So with that, I will first turn to Clark and then Kurt.
Well, thank you. You're back. You're able to see me live and in living color.
We can see you.
I figured out what the problem was. I did an update on Zoom just before we started. So, you know, it was very wonky, which so I switched to the iPad. But anyways, I'm back in living color.
I'm glad to see you.
I appreciate, Mr. Chair, you saying about having the workshop, because I was going to ask about that as actually what my question was going to be on, because I think it's some tremendous information. Fred, I'd love to have a bit more information on the Cornell, on the costs of that as well, because that's one that I'm quite interested in, but I'm thinking I'll be talking to folks like Graham and our town clerk to see about that as well, because I think it looked tremendous. I'd like to have a bit more information on that as well.
I could give some preliminary answer to that, Mr. Chair, if this is a good opportunity for that.
Is that
It
on
can wait
our,
till later, or whenever you feel, Mr. Chair.
why don't we, again, I'm just being very aware of the fact that we do have a CAPG meeting that some of us have to go to and others would like to be part of. So if we can, yes, I'm looking at you, Kurt. We do have that workshop opportunity. So perhaps instead of getting into minutia on that today, unless you really want
That's
to,
fine.
Clark, we
No.
could defer that to the workshop. Would that be okay, Fred?
Yeah, sure. I'll just simply say that the greater the pool of students, the much deeper the corporate discount. So, and the threshold's about 20. They suggested that we partner with York. Jeff suggested maybe management might be interested, and I'm building off what you just said, Clark, maybe the region would be interested. The larger the group we get, the much cheaper the courses are. They are the individual course, and that's one of the reasons I'm bringing all this forward early in the budget process, because it's way too expensive to decide in February to add it on. It starts at about 4,000 a course US, and it drops to below 50% very quickly. And it's 4 courses for the certificate. There are a few Canadian alternatives. I don't see any of them at the postgraduate certificate level. There's one site that says, here's the 10 best online D&I course programs to do. Some of them are universities. Some of them are actually companies like the ones that the service engaged previously, CCDI, I think it's called, for the survey. Anyhow, that's
Okay.
just some context.
So
And that's helpful too, as well.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, do you know what data we will be having the workshop?
I don't believe this. Fred, have we been able to schedule one at this point, or we're still working on that?
No, you've got me running so friggin' fast. I haven't put that even. Graham will canvass the board, assuming that's the direction you want to go, and assuming that it's the whole board rather than a committee.
Yeah,
Okay,
it will
thank
be.
you. That was my next question.
I believe the direction from the board from the retreat was full board, considering it is one of the most important aspects of the board calendar. I think everybody needs to be involved in that. And when I asked you if it had been done yet, I wasn't suggesting it should have been done by now. I was just asking just because I didn't want to.
I'm assuming you also want the service budget discussed at the same time. So
Absolutely.
I thought we might, after we hear Steve's update, we'll I'll after the meeting, I'll circle back with them and we'll suggest a couple dates.
That's great. And again, the benefit that we have this year, and probably for 1 year only, is the fact that we get to present to regional council on December 8th. So we do have time to make sure that that we get through this process to the satisfaction of all board members. Kurt, you're up next. Oh, I'm sorry, Clark, were you done? Your little hand is still up there, buddy.
It's so that you know I'm here, but I will,
Oh,
I
okay.
will lower it.
Kurt, you're up next.
Well, I don't have that much to say, actually. I mean, for the record, I'd like to stress the importance of the work that we're talking about here and that the budget entails.
Yes.
I don't think the pressure that it creates is something that can't be managed in the grander scheme of things. Looking at the overall budget, I would urge us to set the date for the workshop or workshops so that we can move forward with that. And that's about all I have to say, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
All I can say to that is absolutely, sir. We will push that forward, and I'll keep Fred running as fast as possible to make sure that that happens. Nav, you're up next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Fred, incidentally, what was the 2020 budget for the personnel? Do you have those figures?
The forecast is there 382 and change. The budget, I need a few minutes offline to get that for you. I'm going to say it's probably in the 350 range, but that's a big guess. I can find out for you in just a few minutes.
Okay, I'm just interested in understanding, so just to get some clarity on the staff that were presently working on governance and staff or additional consultants who will be needed. So I was trying to get some clarity. So maybe we can get that as well at the same time.
I think that
so I'll bring all that forward at the workshop then. All those details.
Okay. Thank you.
Is there, before I go to the chief, are there any other requests for details that you'd like at the retreat on the governance budget? Certainly feel free to articulate them now, and if you there's no harm sending a note out later on with questions and requests that can be put into the agenda for that session later, but give that some thought as well. Chief, you're up next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to make a couple quick comments just for the board's consideration. And certainly the board's budget and business is the board's budget and business and not mine, but they also do not come about totally separate. There's not separate funding for the board. So for the board to know that we are really going to struggle to get close to or to get to 3.7% this year. And everything is being looked at. We're probably cutting about 6% of requests to get to 3.7. And to backdrop that, I also want to mention, I meant to mention this a couple times over the years, that I think there's an inequity on the board. And I think it might be a regional council decision or otherwise, but all board members do not receive an honorarium. You all put extra time into this, and for my 2 cents worth, I think everyone should receive an honorarium. There are duties above and beyond what some of you may do at regional or municipal councils, but that would be a further expense to the board, and you'd have to find savings to do some of those things. But nothing happens in a vacuum. It's one budget, and we're very, very pressured this year.
Thanks, Chief. Understood. Anything further on this? Okay, so the direction here is to receive I believe it's to receive. I just have to flip back.
That's correct, sir.
I don't like not having 2 computers. That makes me sound like a real geek, but it makes it difficult. Yeah, so the direction is to receive. Thanks, Fred. Can I get a motion to receive the governance budget, please? Thank you, Clark. Seconded by? Thank you, Kurt. Any objection? Seeing none, that is carried, and further discussion will occur at the board retreat once we get to that, or the board workshop once we get that date established. Okay, moving on in a similar vein to the HRPS 2022 budget, which is I alluded to earlier and almost put in front of the governance budget. I apologize again to Fred for that. Chief, you want to lead us on that?
Yeah, just very briefly, we have had, as the board members would know, that have been through these processes for 1 year or the last 10 years. They're always a very in-depth process that we go through, led by Paul Laverne and Greg Kinnear and our great finance team here. We go out to all of our district commanders or unit commanders. Most often those are superintendents. Also now the likes of Tracy, who's here on this call from an HR perspective, or sometimes inspectors that oversee different units as commanders. And they reach down to staff and we try to get a very realistic view of what we need for additional staffing. The backdrop to all of those discussions is also the growth that we're experiencing in this region, particularly in the town of Milton, which is going to be and is projected to be the fastest growing city still for probably many years to come. It's gone from 30,000 as I used to know it to 130,000. It's going to be 300,000, I believe, is still the projections. It will be the largest city in the regional municipality of Halton eventually. And we struggle at times to keep pace with growth from a staffing perspective. Some of that happens as we discuss year to year. We're very fortunate here. First of all, let me say that right up front, Chair Carr, and for those of you that are on regional council and municipal councils, we're very blessed to have guidelines in the 3.7% range, where some municipalities are asked to, what does 0% or 1% look like? 0% in Toronto would be 400 to 500 layoffs. So I don't think that's realistic either. The 3.7, though a lot of that disappears. There's a 1.55% negotiated salary increase, which kicks in on January 1st of 2022. So we're down to about 2% out of the 3.7. And we've got a lot of pressure. Some of you that are in private business or even public sector in different ways will realize some of the expenses of information technology. And a lot of that is transitioning from buying new technology, which for a year or two, some of your service arrangements and subscriptions may be included in that. And then all of a sudden it's hundreds of thousands of dollars. So we have that added pressure here because we do want to be, and this board I know wants the Halton Regional Police Service to be one of the most progressive services when it comes to our use of IT and of technology to make this service the best it can be and make our citizens the safest it can be. So we are going to really struggle to come in at a 3.7. We will show you what that looks like. We can do that in the very near future. We can show you a couple of different potential solutions, and I'll also be very open on what the total ask was if we included everything that was asked for in the budget. It would just be upwards of 9% increase. Obviously, that is totally unrealistic, and we're not going there. So I think with that said as a backdrop, Mr. Chair, it's very important, even as later today or before the end of the board meeting, that board members get back to Graham or whoever, and we come up with a date for a budget workshop so we can give you all of the details in very much of an education setting so that you understand some of the pressures and the justification for the budget. Relationships with Jane McCaskill, the CAO at the region, could not be better. They always have been. In my now I'm just in my 10th year here as the chief of police back in Halton. So thank you very much, Gary, if you could pass that on to Jane and her staff. But Paul and Greg do a great job here and really have every cent accounted for. So we're really looking forward to sharing that information with you so that you will see the true picture.
Thanks, Chief. Questions? I don't see any questions. So I just be clear, is your intent to present the budget at this point directly to that first workshop, or will you be presenting it to the board in a preliminary fashion in October 1st? I'm just curious what your timing, your thoughts on timing are.
I think my preference is we would do the workshop within the next 2 weeks if possible. so that
Okay.
that's a full and open discussion and presentation to the board. But it won't be a properly constituted board meeting, so there'll be no decisions for the board to make at
Right.
that meeting. It's just an education session.
Yeah.
So that, and we would be prepared to present at as early as the October board meeting. I think we
Okay.
probably still should, because if we went to the November board meeting, it would only be a week or a week and a half before the December 8th presentation to council. So I think the end of October board meeting is the best for us to target to bring the final budget suggestions to the board.
Yeah, I think I do agree. I just wanted to make sure I knew what your timing was. I'm seeing hands popping up. Please use your raise hand feature on Zoom so that I can keep account of who wants to speak. Otherwise, Clark gets to speak first every single time. Having said that, Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, sometimes I don't see a problem with that. No, I'm just hoping that we're able to do the workshop. We can do it in person as well
That'd be
for a
good.
greater dialogue. I know that it might be, looking at space requirements. I'm hoping the community room will be able to do it, or if the gym at the regional building, something to be able to do that, so we can have that greater dialogue and not be stuck by the constraints of technology.
My understanding, the community room has a legal capacity of 30 persons 33. Thank you, Paul. It was like a baseball call there. I think it was 33, as he said, based on COVID physical separation requirements. So I think that's perfectly reasonable to approach it in that fashion.
And Paul's a numbers guy, Paul is, so it's actually 33.5.
33.5, okay. So we'll have to find a 0.5. I'll bring my dog. Okay, so I saw Kurt's hand go up and then I saw it go down. Kurt, was that intentional or did you have a question?
Well, I don't think there's anything further that I need to say, but I echo what everybody is saying, and let's try to set these workshops ASAP.
Agreed.
Perhaps next week, if at all possible. If the chief is ready and Fred's ready, then why don't we just do it?
I think that's the key is going to be when the chief and his team are ready to present is going to be the main driver. There's no point obviously having a meeting until the documentation's ready, which is, I guess, what my poorly worded question was to the chief earlier. And it should have been strictly, when will you be prepared to present the budget? So maybe I'll just recast it in that fashion and just see if we can get a sense of that.
I am ready now, I believe, but you may need 2 weeks to get the board together.
Okay, so so you're ready as soon as we can get ourselves organized. Is that what you're saying?
That's right.
Perfect. Okay, so Fred, I'm sorry, you're going to have to run just a little faster, you and Graham, to help us get this organized. Thank you very much. Further questions for the chief? See none, can I get a motion to receive the report, please? Kurt and Clark, any questions, comments? See none, that is approved, and we will have that meeting organized in relatively short order. And I believe that we will also, correct me if I'm wrong, Fred, but we also need to coordinate a policy meeting again at some point in the next little while too. Is that correct?
It's already scheduled.
It's already scheduled. Thank you. I haven't looked at I don't look at my calendar much beyond the next couple of days, or else I just get terrified. Yeah, just like Clark. Okay, so let's move on to our next item, which is 4.5, sponsorship of the OAPSB Labor Seminar. Members of the board, this is a pretty straightforward ask, and there's a recommendation on that ask, I believe, for $2,000 from the trust fund. Does anybody wish to discuss this, ask any questions, or is there a motion? Kurt?
I'm prepared to move it.
Okay, so the $2,000 contribution has been moved. Is there a seconder for that? It's been seconded by Ingrid. Is there any further comment or questions? And for the sake of the public watching, even though we just got finished talking about budget and how strained we are, this is coming out of our trust funds. So these are funds that are not part of the budgeting process, and they are available for exactly this purpose. Members of the board, is there any objection to the approval of this motion? Seeing none, that is approved. Okay, that was 4.5. Moving on to 4.6, delegation to the CAPG annual board meeting. And that is a meeting which is, I alluded to earlier, taking place today. Fred, can you explain, I guess it's a Graham report. Why do we require a designate? Is it like one heartbeat away or something? I don't understand. Why do we require this designate?
They do require a voting designate from each board. As noted in the report, the deadline was last Friday, so we had to give them a name in the interim. So we gave them yours. If the board objects, you can nominate somebody else right now, and I can very quickly send them notes saying, please change from Chair Knoll to someone else.
Okay.
That is the essence of this report. It's looking for the board's endorsement of you as its voting designate for this meeting.
Okay. So does anybody object to that? Other than me? I'm just kidding. That's fine. I'm happy to do it. I was going to sign on anyway. Clark?
I was going to just suggest that we move and we add your name in there to formalize it. I would move that.
Thanks, Clark. Seconded by? Kurt, isn't that a conflict of interest, Kurt? I'm just kidding. Any objection to that? That's carried. Okay, thank you. Okay, so that brings us to, there's no action on the agenda. That's just an information item, I believe. Yes, it's just an information item. And I do just draw to your attention that the conference starts today at, I believe, 11:30. Yes, 11:30 on Zoom. So I guess hopefully most of us will be able to be on that, depending on when we get out of our meeting. Members of the board, it is time for operational verbal updates, and I'll first turn to the chief to see how he wants to proceed.
Either deputy?
Deputy Hill, you're up first.
Thank you. Just wanted to give a quick update on our most recent recruit class. I know now that you haven't had the opportunity for a while to see them graduate. I know you have an interest in know who we're sending to OPC. So the class is going right now is we have 22 recruits going, 9 women and 13 men. And the representation, we have members representing Pakistan, India, Iran, Portugal, Nepal, Singapore, and Jamaica. And language is spoken at a conversational level. American Sign Language, Urdu, Hindi, Punjabi, Farsi, Tibetan, and Nepali. So a really diverse class. It's going to continue to make our membership even more rich, and we're looking forward to them coming back. So I just wanted to let you know about that.
Thanks, Deputy. Ingrid, question?
So I just wanted to commend the service for this excellent recruiting outcome. And I know we're going to be hearing later on a symposium for women. When I look at the new recruits, I see that the 41% of the recruits are females. And to your point, Deputy Hill, such a great element of diversity. So congratulations. Well done.
Thank you. And it's probably a quick little opportunity, and I could go into it much later. When we look at them coming through the door, that's just the start of it. You'll be seeing Inspector Biggs later on in the in-camera portion. And if we haven't mentioned it before, we actually have Sue seconded, looking at our internal diversity and inclusivity and a bit of how do we maintain our inclusivity from the moment you get here to the day you retire, and all the components of that. So I'm sure that we will speak to that much more, but I just want to be clear in that the idea is not just, doesn't end at recruitment. It's the entire life of when you're a member of our service and beyond. So
it's a long journey.
The long journey. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ingrid. I can just quickly comment. I was actually sitting in the lobby of headquarters as the recruits were leaving, having picked up their uniforms and various accoutrements, and it certainly was a very impressive a group of candidates or of recruits, to be sure. So my congratulations. I didn't get a chance to speak with them. They all seemed very excited and enthusiastic, and they were bolting out the door, I guess, getting ready for their journey to the college. And we look forward to seeing them on the streets and at headquarters in the months and years to come. Kurt, you're up next, sir.
I just want to echo what everyone has said, and this is ample evidence that the service is walking the talk. The diversity included in this group is outstanding, and I'm happy to move this.
Thank you. Well, we'll take the motion as a motion in spirit because we don't actually require a motion, but I do understand your sentiment wanting to move this. It's a great news story, and thank you for delivering it, Deputy Hill. Deputy Wilkie, anything from you today?
I guess the only thing I would add is that our EDI unit has actually begun the in-person EDI training for our diversity teams throughout the organization. So as we mentioned earlier, this is sworn civilian, very tenure, and there are champions in the districts and different units and bureaus. And we are significantly investing in their cultural competency. We touch on things like unconscious bias and so many other things, and they truly are moving the needle, many of which are representing across the region today on the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation at a number of events throughout each municipality. So we're very proud of that work. And to Deputy Hill's point, we bring them in, we need to make sure that that training is ongoing and that investment is sustainable throughout their entire career.
Thank you, Deputy. Back to you, Chief. Anything further, or does that conclude our verbal updates for today?
The only short thing I'm going to add is really for Mr. Foster as a past basketball coach. Our recruits are at Aylmer now. They're also very diverse in height, from about 5 feet to 7'4". So we will see you in camera.
Yeah, the one gentleman I noticed actually had a duck leaving the building, so we may actually have to invest in a new set of doors. Thank you, Chief. Anything, I guess that's it for that portion of the meeting. Members of the board, I'll draw your attention to the action registry. There is, I apologize again. Is there anything to be lifted off the action registry today? Any questions, comments? Seeing none, no, Fred?
No, everything is basically ongoing, and the completion date of item 4.4 at the Policy Advisory Committee will be deferred, of course, till the next board meeting on 28 October, because there's another meeting on the 14th of October of the committee.
Right. Okay. Terrific. Any questions, comments? Can I get a motion to receive the action advisory or the action register? Thank you, Clark. Thank you, Gary. Comments, questions? Any objection? That is carried. Any new business to come before the public session of our board meeting today before we say thank you to our attendees and those who are not going to join us in the confidential session? Seeing none, I want to say thank you to everybody that participated today. I noticed that a few people had popped in as attendees, and anybody that is watching us on our new website, thank you for participating today and being part of today's board meeting, keeping abreast of what your Halton Police Board is doing. Thank you to members of the service who joined us this morning. I just once again want to acknowledge today's significance and say to everybody watching right now, miigwech, and have a great day. We'll see you on the confidential meeting. Oh, I guess I need a motion to go into closed session after having said all that. Thank you, Gary and Kurt. Any objection? We're moving to closed session. Members of the board, your link was previously forwarded. You should have that in your email.
Graham, could you send me it, please? I didn't get the link. Thanks.
Thanks, Graham.